Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Perinatal Connect video series. Perinatal Connect is a research organization working on improving maternal mental health during the perinatal period. The purpose of this video series is to highlight community services in the local Champaign-Urbana area that are supporting families. My name is Rachel McKinney. I am the mother of 3. I teach childbirth education and am a doula. I'm also a patient participant in our research group. Emily, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Emily Lux. I'm a patient researcher in Perinatal Connect. I have a 5-year-old son, and I teach social work at Millikan University.
Awesome. And so today we're talking to Kathleen. She is a peer breastfeeding counselor through the WIC program at Public Health, and she's here to share information about the breastfeeding program there. Kathleen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. So I'm the mother of an almost 3-year-old and one on the way sometime during this pandemic winter. And I breastfed my son until about, I guess, 2 months ago when my body decided it couldn't make a baby and feed a baby at the same time.
It's too much work.
Too much.
Yeah.
And so the peer counselor program at WIC is really great. It's all women who have breastfed their own children for at least a year, and usually within the last 5 years. So we're all moms of young kids. And some of us are certified lactation counselors. I will be at the end of December. And so that's one part of the overall WIC program at CUPHD. We provide a lot of support. WIC is specifically focused on nutrition. So if you qualify, which I encourage everybody to check out the income guidelines, because you might be a little bit surprised at who can qualify for WIC. I think the income guidelines are generally higher than people assume, especially if you have multiple children. If you have 2 kids, it's almost $50,000 a year, is the cutoff. It's like 48 something. So, if you're curious, if you qualify, definitely take a look. But the WIC program, it is a government-sponsored program to ensure that our pregnant moms and breastfeeding moms and children under the age of 5 are getting adequate nutrition. So generally, ideally, a mom will enroll as soon as she finds out she's pregnant and come in and be certified with one of our nutritionists and get started on a nutrition plan. There is food provided through this plan, which is really great, and that continues into the postpartum period. And you also get nutrition counseling, and there are nurses on staff and other medical professionals. So that can also be a great resource if you find access to medical care a little bit challenging. And then basically, if you, the nutritionist will ask you if you plan to formula feed or if you're interested in breastfeeding at all. And this is one of those things a lot of people associate with formula feeding, but actually, we are very, very, very pro breastfeeding. And all of our nutritionists, I think except for the newest hire, are certified lactation consultants. We have an IBCLC on staff who oversees our breastfeeding program. And we have the peer counselor program, which is completely 100% dedicated to increasing that initiation of breastfeeding rate and then the duration of breastfeeding in the postpartum period. So when you come in and you get certified and you say, I'm interested in learning more about breastfeeding, or I think I might want to try breastfeeding, then you'll be enrolled in the peer counselor program and assigned to one of us. We have 3 peer counselors, myself, Tamaya, and Mary. Tamaya has breastfed 4 kids, so there's probably not a problem that you can encounter that she hasn't experienced. And we make contact with you ideally early in pregnancy, but I've had moms literally enter my caseload as they were going into labor. So there's no time is too late. You can also become a PC client in the postpartum period too. So we'll contact you early on in pregnancy and then sort of just check up throughout pregnancy. We provide not only education and lactation support, but also just sort of emotional support. We sort of bridge the gap between doula and lactation consultants a little bit. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of my moms that I've worked with really will contact me in times when they're sort of freaking out a little bit about pregnancy, and so we have a lot of resources that we can direct moms to, both in terms of community medical resources, but also I have put moms in touch with some doulas. I've put moms in touch with other community lactation resources if their needs exceed what we can currently do, which normally we could do everything in-house, but because of the pandemic, we're not doing quite as much in-person visits and things like that. Yeah, and so then around the 8th month, so I like to schedule a breastfeeding class with each of my moms, where we walk through the basics of breastfeeding, the physiology, and what to expect in those early days, and best ways to set yourself up for success. And then we have a 9-month call where we talk about birth plans and how the various labor interventions can impact breastfeeding. And none of this is from we don't advocate for any particular manner of giving birth, but we just feel like it's important for moms to understand, if you have an epidural, what should you expect? If you have this happen, what should you expect? And how would that impact those early days of breastfeeding?
And it doesn't even have to be like, if you choose this, like, even if it's
right.
something like, this is what happens after X
exactly.
happens sometimes. And so, yeah, there are lots of birth things that we don't choose, but,
right.
And
it can help stop some of that postpartum panic.
Yes, yeah, and like if your
Mhm.
milk is delayed a little bit, and that to know that that's something to expect after this particular intervention, that
Absolutely.
might be a much more helping calm down somebody in that situation.
Yeah, because it's really interesting when you look at the research about breastfeeding success rates. The main number one reason that moms give up in the very earliest days is they're convinced that they're not producing any milk.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about reasons why it may seem like that, it seems to help a lot. Yeah, so that 9-month call and that breastfeeding education, I think, are a really invaluable service that we offer. And again, it's totally free of charge. If you're paying for this outside of the WIC program, then you're looking at like $1,000 for that. Yeah, and so then we follow up. We get notified by the hospital when you have your baby, and we'll call you. Some peer counselors will call the day of. I generally try to wait one more day or send a text like, "Hey, how you doing?" But we get in contact within 1 or 2 days after your baby is born, and make sure that you're aware of, what resources do you have at the hospital? Has the lactation consultant been to see you? What are you experiencing? Have you forgotten absolutely everything we talked about because you just went through a crazy experience? And do you need some help? And then we'll follow up again. The standard is 2 times in that first week, but obviously if we're having issues, we'll call you or talk to you or text you or however you want, as many times as possible. And then generally we get in touch once weekly after that for the first month, and then once a month for as long as you want, or more as needed. So we're also available generally. I tell my moms that I'm available 24 hours a day. I might not see a text in the middle of the night, but I'll always do my best to get back as soon as possible. Because, I mean, you guys know in those early days of breastfeeding, if you have a question, it's not going to be in business hours. That's never how children work. Yeah, so that's the basic peer counselor services. As far as, I'll talk about what we do in normal times, because we'll just, have hope that one day that will be.
We'll assume that it will change at some point, sometime in the future.
Yeah. So we do have a breastfeeding clinic where you can come in, and again, we have I forget what the actual number is. It's at least 5 or 6 CLCs on staff who can all do latch assessments, weighted feeds. So you can come in for free and do that at the clinic. We also do home visits where we can bring a scale and do that if that's easier for you. And we do have an IBCLC on staff for, those cases that may be more complicated and need a little bit more intervention. And we also, this is something that I don't know why we have a hard time getting the message out about, but we provide pumps free of charge if you have a Medicaid card. So, that's another thing to keep in mind. We will show you how to set it up, show you how to use it. We can help you, get the correct flange size and all of that. And then we also offer sort of broader support in terms of ongoing care. And this is, generally our services aren't open just to the community at large. You have to have qualified for them. But we do have a Facebook page that's open to the entire community where you can ask questions. We post breastfeeding education videos, tips, answer questions, all that kind of stuff. And we also have a milk, we're a milk depot, so you can drop off milk. If you are a mom who is fortunate to have a large supply and nothing else to do with it, you have to, if you are interested in doing that, give us a call and we can tell you how to get pre-qualified to do that. Don't just show up with, like a whole bunch of milk. And we also are now a milk bank dispensary. We sell milk, I believe it's $20 an ounce, which, people are like, oh my gosh. And remember, this isn't meant to be like, this is how you feed your baby for the entire year of breastfeeding. But in those times when maybe you have to take a short course of a medication that's incompatible with breastfeeding, or you have to be separated and you don't have a stash built up, just coming in and getting 4 or 5 ounces can sometimes save a breastfeeding relationship. So I think it's just important to know that that's an option. In the normal times, we host a Mommy and Baby Expo every August where we connect with all manner of local birth and lactation services. And it's usually coincides with World Breastfeeding Week, which we also do a lot of promotion for. This year, since we couldn't do the expo, we focused on making sure that all the providers in our area who are both OBs, midwives, or pediatricians are aware of our services, are aware of patient rights when it comes to lactation. I actually learned that my son should have qualified for donor milk in the NICU, but nobody ever offered it to me. And I learned that when we were sending these mailers out, I was like, oh my gosh. So we do a lot of promotion of knowing your rights as a parent, as a working pumping mom, and just in general, what you are entitled to if you want to do everything you can to provide breast milk to your baby. So I think that pretty much,
there are so many things, right? Like rights and just community services and all this stuff that we just don't even know about. And
absolutely.
When we've had our first, we were on WIC, and I remember when we went in to get, like, I've been pregnant this whole, the whole time. And at the very end, when we were registering at the hospital, they were like, do you get WIC? And I was like, I don't know what that is, so I guess no. And she was like, well, do you get free cheese? And I was like, no. Like, where do I get free cheese? Like, what
that sounds great.
Yeah, what does that mean? And so I think that there's just so many of these things. And obviously, like, a free cheese is something that is one piece of what WIC does. But like, there's so many other things, and I didn't even realize how much WIC did in our community until kind of talking to you about it. So you guys have a very comprehensive support system that you have for some families
that honestly every mother in the US should get. Everybody should get a phone call the day your baby is born that's like, are you okay?
Absolutely. And we just talked to one of the nurses at Healthy Beginnings and Family Foundations who kind of who said things have gotten a little bit crazy with COVID, but like we're starting to get into a place where we're able to kind of start offering something like that also. So we're getting there. I feel like there is that those voices of what we need are getting louder. And
and I think it's just nobody I think likes to acknowledge that they need help in general, but then on top of it to take the initiative to sign up for a government provided service. Remember, there's no shame in it. If you qualify for it, do it. I mean, it's like people wouldn't not take tax breaks just because that's government aid, and this is the same. So if you qualify for it, do it.
That's a great way to look at it. Yeah, because there can be a little bit of that stigma, and there shouldn't.
And we serve such a variety of people from all backgrounds, and you just have to qualify based on your income. And again, depending on how many kids you have, you can kind of make a lot of money and still get some WIC services, So if you're curious about it, definitely look into it. It's the most comprehensive pregnancy and lactation support program that I know of, private or government.
And there is, you really do need that support in those nighttime hours, or just like, I don't know what to do next. And so hearing somebody just say, no, this is normal. Cause I remember with my, my doula was a CLC when I had our last, and he was doing things that I had never, like the other two didn't. Right. And so I was like, hey, is this normal? Like, it feels like, okay, after having 2 kids and breastfed them, I should know what is
right?
normal. Yeah. But it was just so different, and each kid's going to have these different things. So just because you've done it before doesn't mean that you can't, benefit from those services also.
Well, and a lot of our moms, maybe they're on their 4th child and they never tried breastfeeding. And then a nutritionist was like, hey, this is a good thing to do. And they go, oh, okay. And, breastfeeding is completely different than bottle feeding. And so you're really almost like a new parent again. And that support can really make a big difference.
Yeah.
And it's amazing too. Just I've had a few moms where I could tell that if they hadn't had an answer to their question at this moment on this day, they would have stopped. And so it's really it's gratifying on our end to be able to be like, okay, here's a solution to this. It's going to be fine. Especially, I have a mom right now whose baby is still in the NICU. And so just getting over that hump, I mean, it's incredibly difficult to do on your own if you want to breastfeed after having had that NICU experience.
Absolutely.
And I had a complicated birth and a complicated postpartum period. And one thing I'm grateful for is there are very few problems that a mom can tell me that they have that I didn't have. So it's nice. Sometimes I think it's nice to just hear, hey, we had that, there was a solution, and look, here we are on the other side of it, and it was fine.
Or even just having somebody say, I know, I've been there and this sucks. Like, Yeah.
I mean, I remember, so my son struggled with a really complicated tongue tie, and there were many, many, many dark days where I was just like, this is never going to happen. It feels like we've tried everything and it's not getting any better. And there was a mom that somebody put me in touch with whose daughter was maybe 3 months older than my son. And she'd had a tongue tie, and she was like, oh yeah, it'll be fine. I was like, what? Really?
Yeah.
So just having that light at the end of the tunnel can help a lot too.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Emily, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say, I thought it was interesting how you go over the birth plan and how that can impact breastfeeding. Because I wanted to do a water tub birth with no pain medicine or anything, but I ended up having a lot of pain medicine and the epidural, and then I ended up having a C-section. And then after that, I had complications. And I think by that time, I tried to breastfeed because I just knew how important it was. I was in so much pain and dealing with so much, being overwhelmed with the first baby that I had to stop like 2 to 3 weeks. He was 2 to 3 weeks.
So common.
Old. And I felt so guilty. Yeah. I don't know. And I think, I don't know if that's what you've experienced, but I don't know if having a C-section does reduce your ability to breastfeed, but you're just.
It complicates it for sure. So I was the same. I wanted, don't touch me during my labor. And then I ended up with preeclampsia and induction, fetal distress, emergency C-section, NICU, the works, So yeah, I mean, that's something I try to talk to my moms about too, is that obviously, thinking through your ideal scenario is really important. But we were fortunate to work with Rachel as our doula and take childbirth classes with her. And I was like adamant that, okay, I want to know everything about every possible thing that could happen to me so that I'm not freaked out. And it was really helpful because then, when our birth plan went from plan A to plan triple Z, it was one less element of scary. But I was grateful to know, like, he may be sleepy at first because of all of the medications. I mean, you're getting narcotics in your epidural. I think people forget that. It's not like lidocaine, And so just some of those impacts where, maybe let's be prepared to pump at first. Maybe let's be prepared to do all these different things. If you have a C-section with no labor, the research is a little murky on it, but anecdotally, it certainly appears that if you have a C-section without any labor at all, then your milk is significantly delayed. And that, if you aren't prepared for that, psychologically, you think you can't do it, and even if your milk does then come in to full amount, which it always does by 6 or 7 days, you will not, it's so many women don't trust it after that point.
It's hard to go back from the things that you've
Yes.
already convinced yourself of.
Yeah. And, I also talk to my moms a lot about, if there's any way that you can have a doula, it makes such a huge difference. We wouldn't have known about the tongue tie for a very long time because of the NICU situation. My son was there for 4 days. And in recovery, Rachel noticed, she was like, something looks funny about this latch. And it got us in touch with our lactation consultant, who basically was like, hey, I'm coming the day you get home from the hospital. Tell me when that is, And we got home. She took a look and was like, this is a tongue tie. We will, here. And then we were off to the races. But, if I hadn't known that, I would have come home and just thought he couldn't do it, and wouldn't have known why. And so I think, it's so easy to feel like, oh, women have been having babies for millennia. We've got this. I'll be fine. And you will be fine. But women have also had help for millennia. So,
And it feels like this normal, natural thing that just should happen, and it isn't. Neither
it
one
almost never does.
Yeah.
I get whenever I get a mom where I call, on that first day, and they're like, yeah, everything's fine. I'm like, what?
No, it isn't. What's that's impossible. Yeah, I mean, it's lovely for people to have that, very sunset, unicorns, rainbows experience. And I am, totally thankful for the people that have those experiences. But it's, you're learning how to do it. Baby's learning how to do it. So it is,
even if everything goes perfectly.
Together.
You've never, and even if you've had multiple children, this baby has never breastfed before. Yeah. And it's, I hear a lot of experiences, like you were just saying, Emily, about, I really wanted to make it work. I got 2 to 3 weeks in and I just couldn't do it. I mean, that story is not unique. And we actually have a book that we all read about breastfeeding grief and breastfeeding trauma. And I think people underestimate the impact that has on maternal mental health. I honestly attribute my relative mental and emotional stability postpartum to making breastfeeding work. I think, having had the birth that we had was really a challenge. And I definitely sought therapy after that, to deal with those things. But I think I got such a sense of accomplishment and worth by just sheer determination making breastfeeding work, that it actually contributed a lot to healing some of that trauma from the birth. But at the same time, I also know many women who they didn't have the resources, they weren't in a mental place to be able to do it. And that's a real thing to mourn, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so we also work, some of my moms who really wanted to make breastfeeding work, and for whatever reason it didn't, I don't just never talk to them again. We spend some time processing that. We spend some time making sure that they really feel that they've exhausted their options, or that they're like, no, this is the right choice, to try to mitigate some of that. But there's going to be an emotional response to that feeding relationship that is really hard to understand until you've been there, I think.
Yeah. Yes. Well, Kathleen, I am thrilled with this resource that we have for our community.
Good.
I'm glad that we've done this video, and that, you've been able to share so much, and I can't wait to, let other people who haven't heard about what comprehensive support you guys are giving, is available right here, as easy as just seeing if you're, if you qualify. So
yeah.
I appreciate.
And one other thing we do offer for the community in normal times is twice a year, CUPHD will host lactation consultant training. So that's to become a CLC. It's a week-long course, and you take the exam at the end of it. So any doulas in the community, nurses, any, I mean, anybody. You don't even have to be a medical professional, but just
Awesome.
something to keep in mind for the after times.
Yes. Yeah. Post-COVID. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you guys. It was great to talk to you.